and welcome to Altitude. My name is Adi Dolan. I'm an air traffic controller and the head of ATC training at NATS Heathrow, and I'm absolutely delighted to be here in the host seat for the first Altitude of 2025. Now, away from the tower and the terminals at Heathrow lies the APOC, the Airport Operations Centre. From here, up to 50 individuals from right across the airport community come together to manage just about everything. All the challenges that a major international airport like Heathrow would face, like monitoring the traffic, responding to suspect packages, and even planning presidential visits. It really is the heart that keeps the airport moving throughout every single day. And to talk us through the APOC and the challenges that they face, I have two absolutely stellar guests to help me. We have Kelly Stone and Jeannine Fernandes. Hello, Kelly.
Hi, good afternoon, Adi.
And hello, Jeannine.
Hi, Adi. Good afternoon, everyone.
A very warm welcome to you both to Altitude. Don't forget, everyone, that you can post your questions to the panel at any point during the show. We will try and get through as many of them as we can a little bit later on. Kelly, if I could start with you, what is your role at Heathrow?
So I'm the head of airport operations at Heathrow, and that is as broad as it sounds. I sit in the Directorate of Operational Delivery and Airline Engagement, and part of that role includes the APOC function, which, as you say, is effectively responsible for delivering Heathrow's day in, day out operation to our performance plan and on target. So it's really coordinating the delivery of in-day operability at Heathrow and all the challenges that we know come with that.
Wow, it sounds like quite a big job. Jeannine, you're an air traffic coordinator. How's that different to a controller, and how do you work with ATC, us over in the control tower?
So thanks, Adi. So as a Heathrow traffic coordinator, most of the Heathrow community will know us as the HOEC, so the Heathrow Operational Efficiency Cell. So we differ very much from other airports. We're quite unique in that we are based in the APOC, but we do have close communication with our colleagues in the tower. So although we're not a controller and controlling the traffic safely in and out of the airfield and around the ground, we are responsible more so in a broader sense of the operation. So working with all the stakeholders behind the scenes, making sure that the air traffic controller has the right information and a full flight plan to allow them to move the aircraft safely in and out of Heathrow.
Wow, excellent, great stuff. Let's talk a little bit more about the APOC. So Kelly, take us through it. So what is it? Give us a sense of the physical location of APOC, the size, what it looks like, what it smells like. We want to know all about that room.
I don't think we want to hold too long on what it smells like. It's a 24/7 operational centre. So as you can imagine, it is busy constantly. So even through the magic hours when Heathrow isn't operating as an airport, Heathrow comes to life with sort of solutions and projects as well. So the team are there 24/7, and we include everything from the airport operations manager, and they're the person coordinating the room. They're our principal threat assessor, and they're there to coordinate, almost like the conductor of the orchestra, the rest of the component parts. That includes everything from our control engineers, so with an engineering estate with a power system the size of the Isle of Wight and the biggest private water network in the UK, there's a lot going on from our engineering perspective. Our baggage service team also sits in there, so if you can imagine, if we have an incident relating to baggage, really important that they co-locate with the staff in there too. Security flow, so for those of you who regularly travel, I know that can be a bit of a bugbear and a bit of a pinch point in terms of your passenger flow. So really important we're monitoring security flow and delivery, but also to make sure that we're keeping everybody safe. Our IT operations team are also in there. So as you can imagine, a 21st century airport is so reliant upon IT that whenever we see issues, and whether that might be on Heathrow's infrastructure, NATS infrastructure, but also airline infrastructure across the world, our IT team are monitoring that and monitoring cyber events and attacks as well. Our UK Border Force team co-located in there so that we can make sure we've got the right resources. Landside ops, I think you mentioned traffic. They're the team who make sure that vehicular flow is operating smoothly through our tunnel network, our car parks and around the airport. We have the engineering help centre, so they take all fault calls to make sure that equipment is available. Operational planning team, so if you can imagine, it's a real fine dance to get Heathrow working every day, and we have a clear plan about the numbers we expect, the amount of air traffic movements, where we need to deploy resource. So our operational planning team are in that live room. Not only are they there to provide sort of day -1 planning, but when we get disruption, they're also really helpful in providing insight on the sort of numbers of disruption and how long it might take to recover. And then sort of the other key area is that aircraft operations unit where Ginny and the team sit co-located, literally side by side. We have the Met Office, we have the HOEC, and we have the aircraft operations duty manager and the stands team. And that's really critical in order to ensure we can deliver sort of up to 1,350 air traffic movements every day during those magic operational hours of sort of 06:02 till 11:30 in the evening. And that's a pretty busy airport. If you were to compare that with most other airports, what we managed to do with Heathrow from that control centre is quite amazing, really.
That is incredible. So the picture that you've painted sounds like a cross between like a James Bond villain's lair and like a command center at NASA Houston. Is everybody literally in the same space, or is it divided up into different rooms, or can you literally walk from one area of operation to another and coordinate with each other face to face?
So we're literally in one room, and the whole point of that is to get that face-to-face contact in the event of an incident, or if we have an issue or something that we need to respond to. And that came about as a result of the BEG report and some of possibly what might be considered to be poor response to winter weather around about a decade ago. APOC recently celebrated its 10-year anniversary, and the whole point of that room is to co-locate. So in there, we do have breakout rooms, because when we stand up to an incident, we have our bronze, silver and gold command, and they have rooms that are based around the outside of APOC. But what it does mean is you've got your incident response teams and also the people there responsible for delivering that live operation, ready to rock and roll, co-located, coordinating well. And yes, we almost have a bit of a World War II James Bond lair kind of table in the middle, where we do all congregate regularly in the event of an incident to compare where we are in terms of recovery, response, and get the view of everybody in the room. So it works really well. And I know certainly gets used more often than I think people realise, because quite often we find ourselves in disruption, whether that might be through a major incident to a storm. What it does mean is that we do have to coordinate our response collectively, whether that be from baggage to security or airspace.
Wow, incredible. So, Jeannine, taking us and zooming in from a NATS perspective to the HOEC role, what does a normal shift look like for you? What is it that you guys are doing that isn't being done elsewhere?
Yeah, so I can't say that it's any shift is a normal shift. They're all very, very different. But we are a small team, so we're a team of 6, but we come from varying backgrounds, from either the airline world, from other airports, and from down in Swanwick as well. So with that, you know, we do draw from our experience a lot, but we work collaboratively with both the Met to the left of us and the aircraft operations duty manager to the right of us. So and it's also important to mention, sort of, although we deal with the shift on the day, so the tactical events, assisting keeping the traffic moving in terms of looking for bottlenecks, providing rerouting options to airlines. We are constantly in contact with our colleagues down in Flow in Swanwick as well. And I've got to say, you know, they are incredible subject matter experts in terms of the broader and bigger picture. And we draw information from them as well, as much as using the tools that we have accessible to us. I'll touch upon some of those tools probably a little bit later, but a normal day looks at identifying the traffic that we're expected to deal with on the day. So identifying any bottlenecks and how we can utilise our tools. So we do have the DCB tool, which looks at current airborne delay, startup delay, any departure punctuality, expected cancellations that we're expected to have in conversations with Heathrow. So ultimately, we're looking at rerouting. We're looking at remote holds for airlines. We're always in contact with our airline stakeholders and also visible. So not on the day, we'll have someone on the desk dealing with the operation, but we'll also have one of us who goes out and engages and reaches out to airlines and other parts of the business to help make us make better informed or more informed decisions, taking into account, what's actually going on the day with the rest of the Heathrow community.
Wow. So what is it that you think that makes the role so necessary at an airport like Heathrow? Imagine a Heathrow without a HOEC. What would that look like? And why do you think it is so necessary for an airport that, as Kelly's described, is really quite constrained within those hours of operation?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think without the HOEC, I think the operation and the schedule would slip massively. I think we play a vital part in assisting with punctuality. So, for example, if there are any issues with airspace restrictions on the wider network, so the European network, we are looking at those in real time to see what's affecting each flight plan, which essentially translates into a customer sitting on a plane for a longer period of time or out on the airfield, which burning fuel as well. So we've always got that carbon, reducing the carbon footprint in the back of our mind as well.
Where did the idea of the APOC come from? You mentioned something about the APOC announcing its 10th anniversary. I remember at Heathrow 25 years ago that absolutely did not have an APOC, and we were brilliant at reacting to things and dealing with crises, but maybe not so good at looking a little bit at the short and medium term horizon and planning what was going to happen next. So Kelly, is the APOC something that's unique to Heathrow, or do other major international airports have similar kind of concepts?
I think it's probably fair to say now, when I go out about and I talk to other airports across the world, that APOC principle has really started to gain sort of traction, whether they call it their command and control centre or co-located ops centre. It's certainly something that you would expect from a major international airport now. But obviously sort of 12, 13 years ago, when we started to innovate and move to that, it was very innovative. We were sort of part of that leading curve edge on people coming up with a centralised coordinated control centre. And we did have control centres, so each of our terminals had a control centre. We also had what was known as the star centre back then, so the traffic function, the airport operations manager and engineering, for example, are co-located. But the benefit of having the entire operation co-located as one is huge, and it's really important to understand, when we're trying to shift sort of 1,300 aircraft a day between a very limited operating window on one of the most space constrained two-runway operations in the world. If you were to look at us, we sort of do the sort of throughput almost that Istanbul does with more runways by far. We're a tenth of the size of Denver if you were to look at our footprint. So in order to optimize what we managed to put through and operate as a hub, so we've got that everything from an ATR 72 coming in right up to the A380, and to make sure that Heathrow operates as a hub, so that short haul operation and it running on time is just as important as serving the long haul. This sort of end-to-end collaboration is the only way in which we can address that. And I think it's fair to say that the HOEC do a grand job, certainly in helping provide insight at sort of D-1 and D-2. And whilst I know weather is probably our biggest bugbear and one of those things that still remains as a little bit of an uncertainty, and I totally understand that, we do our very best to work collectively as a team to make sure we can ensure success on the day. So as well as in-day operation, HOEC are primary in defining our D-1 plan and how we're going to approach tomorrow. And tomorrow, for example, with the classic tomorrow, we're expecting low visibility conditions. And so we've come up with a plan for tomorrow that actually says there is a regulation on that in Europe traffic coming in, which means we have to look at whether we can still deliver the schedule, what we might do to ensure success of that first wave, and to look at things like jet stream and the long haul that are coming in. And HOEC sitting with Met and aircraft ops are critical to that end-to-end delivery.
That's a great example tomorrow, looking at how we can get around the uncertainty, which, let's face it, everybody hates, airlines, but also passengers when they're traveling. They just need to know when they're going to be traveling and the delays they might expect and why. And I think that's a really important step to take. So that stuff takes place, you said, D-1 and 2.
It does, yeah.
Wow, incredible. So, Jeannine, what would a challenging day look like for you in the HOEC? Can you give us an example of where the HOEC has made a real difference in a really pretty tricky day?
Sure, absolutely. So Kelly's just touched on it in terms of our D-1 planning. So although weather, for example, is one of our biggest disruptors, we're only as good as the forecast that we receive. And sometimes that forecast is spot on, and sometimes the weather is unpredictable. However, we do utilise data in the HOEC to help us with that pre-tactical planning. So one of the tools that we have built in and use in collaboration with Heathrow is the DCB tool, so a demand capacity balancing tool. That's an extremely useful tool, and we do lean on it quite heavily. It pulls in Met data, live ATC tactical information that we feed into that on the day in terms of regulations and arrival rates, and also the schedule data from ACL. So with that, it allows us to see in line with the Met forecast that we're receiving, live from the forecaster that we're fortunate to sit next to, which I think again is quite unique at Heathrow. We're able to look at what our landing rate predictions are for the next day. And in terms of disruption, a difficult day for us at D-1 is when we know we've got LVPs or strong winds, or like recently the Storm Dara event and Storm Bert. We've been hit quite recently, and I think the operation has been allowed to be protected and allowed us to serve the customers operating in and out of Heathrow, because we've been more, it's provided us more resilience to be better informed and have a more robust plan for the day. So with that, it allows us to see what we're able to land. So in terms of separation that we require, and ultimately for us, it's about providing a safe operation. So increase with weather and disruption, there's always a necessity to increase spacing between aircraft. So DCB takes that into account and says, this is how many aircraft you want to land at this time, but if we look at the weather and the safe operation and the safe spacing that we need, this is how many aircraft that you can achieve safely. And that leads us to then looking at a plan that we provide to Heathrow in terms of arrival rates and how many movements we can land into Heathrow. So a challenging day looks at also sometimes not always giving your customers what they want to hear, if I'm honest. So that is one of the challenges, the relationship piece. But I think everyone is very transparent, and I think that's where we're able to protect the operation, because everyone shares openly, this is the plan, this is what's expected, and this is how we can still finish the schedule on time to the efficiently. Wow.
So you mentioned DCB, so that's obviously a tool that you use. For those of our viewers and listeners, what is DCB?
So DCB is a software, a desktop tool that we use on the day, and it allows us to identify, again with the schedule data, how many aircraft that are expected to fly out, arrive in that hour, and we can play around with different what if scenarios, so to speak. Right. What if we have X amount of cancellations that are required? What if weather or LVPs at a certain percentage are going to have a certain impact on us? And we can also play around with arrival rates. So we can play in if we're landing a certain number of aircraft an hour or restrictions, and apply those into the tool. And what the output is, it allows us to share that information again with Heathrow in real time, as quickly as possible. What's the airborne delay that we're likely to expect? How many night jet movements are we predicted to have, and how can we best work towards, that leads us to conversations on what do we need to do to reduce the number of night jets, and also looks at both departure as well. So in terms of startup delay, it gives us a piece around, what's the day going to look like if we've got a de-icing program, as in recently it's quite heavy, both the de-icing on stand and with our Jedi South and Delta being in use more recently with the bad weather. It allows us to play around with some of the criteria inside DCB to say, we are going to expect some TSAT delay. So what does that do to the overall schedule? And again, the aircraft ops duty manager to the right of us and the great team in stands as well, the stand allocation team that we work closely with, they can look at that plan for ahead for the next day to, help us be better prepared.
Right. Okay. And I'm right in thinking that we love an acronym in ATC, but DCB, does that stand for demand capacity balancing?
Balancing tool, yes.
Fantastic.
And it says exactly what it does exactly what it says on the tin.
Right, fantastic. I remember using it, seeing the output from it during the delivery of the Queen's funeral. So when that event took place, there were obviously planned periods of silence in and around the capital, but also as the funeral procession moved past Heathrow, and lots of short-term stoppages for periods of silence. And I just cannot imagine how it would have been possible to plan that stuff without DCB, because it allowed us to look at the inbound rates and the landing rates and the spacing required and the departure stoppages required to preserve those planned periods of silence and deliver a schedule that worked to the airlines. And I think without DCB, that would have been pretty impossible.
Yeah, spot on. And I think, Addy, it's really important to say that we use that on an almost daily basis. And when we look at things like the Queen's funeral, which I know people might think is a one-off event, but obviously every November the 11th and Remembrance Sunday, we provide quiet to the cenotaph, and during a ground stop for 2 minutes here at Heathrow, all of the things, King's Fly Past for Trooping the Colour, Coronation, all of those special events, we use DCB as a tool to help us model those, share with the community what the day's schedule might look like, understand if we need to undertake a DVC, which is a demand versus capacity intervention, which is very unique to Heathrow. That doesn't happen at any other UK airport, but allows us to, if we think back in APOC's inception and why it's there, if you imagine sort of 10, 15 years ago, we used to have the roll mats and you would see photos on the front of the paper tomorrow morning of people spending the night in the terminal due to airport or aircraft disruption. And we try and avoid that as much as possible. And whilst we understand it's not ideal in the face of Storm Dara or Storm Bert to end up having to actively cancel flights, I think as a passenger, you would rather know that you've been consolidated to a later flight rather than spend 4, 5 or 6 hours within a very busy terminal building, struggling to find some peace and quiet and some space. So end to end, it does aim to provide stability to the aircraft operations, a better customer service to our airline partners and our customers. And we literally use it for everything. It's a fantastic modelling tool, and it continues to grow. So DCB gets updated every year with more finer meshing and learning as we start to learn more about climate change and weather events, for example, and impact on the European airspace as well.
So coming out of HOEC slightly, Kelly, and looking back at your impressions of the APOC in general, there's a lot of people in there, lots of different stakeholders, and the teamwork element must be absolutely huge for all these people to work together and get on and deliver what we do every day. But are there any particular days that have given you a real sense of satisfaction?
Oh, goodness me. Do you know what? There are so many to mention. The people who work in there, I think you have to be quite resilient to be a member of APOC, but we also do love to pop on a cape and wear our pants on the outside of our trousers every once in a while. There are some really amazing people who together collectively do all they can to look after Heathrow. I've been there with the company for over 35 years, and I think aviation and Heathrow kind of gets in your blood, and it's a bit addictive. But it's really important when we look at sort of recovery from incidents. I was there for 9/11, and I look at where we were then. If we look at Storm Dara and Storm Bert, for instance, I think on that Saturday we had 43 go-arounds, and our A380s, for a fact, were really struggling to land anywhere in the UK. A number had diverts to Northern Europe. But our aim is to recover the operation, understand what we can do and what we can deliver, and how we then will get as many people safely away as possible. So we undertake that capacity intervention, and then we recover the operation. But I think genuinely there have been so many events that it's really difficult to pick out one that stands out. But I think probably my favourite personally was for the King's Coronation. Regrettably, there were low vis, and a number of those aircraft, the older aircraft, really struggle flying in low vis. As anybody who tunes into altitude will know from some of the other previous editions. And they couldn't give the full fly pass, but they then rescheduled that for trooping the colour, which sounds glorious, but obviously a busy June Saturday is very busy at Heathrow, and trying to deliver that in terms of a fly pass as well as the operation. Also, though, coincided with our Family Fun Day, which is an operational kind of give back to the likes of everybody in APOC and the airside operation, and a chance for people to bring their family in. But as a result of that, and coordinating it with the fly pass, working closely with our colleagues at the RAF as well, we actually managed to bring things like the Atlas in and on the ground at Heathrow, which for me, as a bit of an AV geek, I'm not going to lie, my little heart was singing, but to see all the kids and families enjoy that as well. And that's kind of the power of the HOEC and the APOC and the NATS relationship, and what we can achieve, whilst also ensuring that we had little disruption to the actual operation on a very busy day.
That's a nice way to end a fascinating discussion. Thank you very much. I think we're going to take some questions from our audience, and they've been absolutely flying in. So the first one that we're going to pick out is from Stefan. So let's go to you, Kelly. You can stay with us and ask it and answer. Which stakeholders would you like to add to APOC in the future?
Oh, it's a great question, actually, Stefan, because I have to say we're 10 years into APOC and its current IT setup, which, as you can imagine, has come an awful long way. I look at Jeannine there in front of the virtual control facility lab we have over at the tower, and obviously IT is coming an awful long way. So we're looking at what the next generation of our APOC might look like and who we would invite into that. And some of the key people that we might possibly be looking at in the future is things like airlines and ground handling, which together that end-to-end operation at Heathrow even more sort of synchronized in terms of delivery, I think would probably be a great step forwards. But at the moment we work really closely with the likes of our home carriers, so BA and Virgin. They have their op centres close by, and it's a very good operational relationship. But sometimes just to be collectively in the room when you've got that major disruption or a major cyber attack, if you look at CrowdStrike in the summer, sometimes you think there might be further benefit to extend in the room. But great question.
Excellent. We've got a question from Fergus, which I guess we can all have a little dip into this one, which is, how much can you plan for in a sector that can be unpredictable and spontaneous? And one of the things I was going to mention there was around the visit of US President Joe Biden a few years ago in Air Force One, which is obviously a very quiet affair. There's not a lot going on. It's fairly in and out. Nobody really notices. But that is quite a circus, isn't it? And how on earth do you get around managing something like that? But also looking again, as Jenny mentioned before, around about the scheduling and the stops and the starts. Is that something that APOC will get involved with? And Kelly, will go to you first, and then Jenny will come to you next around how HOEC can play a part in those things.
Absolutely, 100%. So we actually have more special movements than you think. If you can imagine, obviously, the royal family also regularly fly in and out. There's a number of state visits happen within a year and all come with those sort of nuances. But I don't think anybody quite does a sort of cortege as the Americans do with all their reinforced Silverados turning up and chaps with very tight jackets and arms. So yes, there's a lot of coordination that goes into those events, and the team in APOC coordinate that. But if you can imagine, there's an awful lot of planning as well, and to make sure that the aircraft and the greeting party, etc., are in a great position, and a position that doesn't impact on the operations. So still really important that we deliver the hub airport. If you were flying tomorrow and POTUS was flying in at the same time, you wouldn't want to think that your flight was being cancelled or rescheduled as a result of Air Force One coming in. So an awful lot of planning involved. But the team are quite well conversed and sort of rehearsed at that sort of thing. We have a number of contingency plans already on the shelf to go.
And yeah, Ginny, is that something that HOEC, if that happened tomorrow, would HOEC be looking at schedules and how they can look at pinch points and then recover the operation once everything was getting back to normal?
Absolutely. So we do utilise other tools in the APOC that are part of the wider piece, so the European network, so Eurocontrol. So we have daily engagement with the network management team over in Eurocontrol to help support our decisions and looking at that high profile flight, for example. Our colleagues down in Flow more so will be looking at the broader picture or the wider picture regionally to make sure that again all flights are treated equally and treated safely, and no one is penalised because they're not a high profile flight. But we just ensure that to recover from any separation or distances that are put in place, that we recover well from them with the right planning in place. So but I've got to be honest with that, it's very much a collaborative piece. So it's drawing on that one team ethos and pulling from Flow down in Swanwick, having that live feed into the VCR, so the team in the tower, because they're, although we're having the bigger picture, it's important that we share that with them as well, so they're in the know of what else is happening, in terms of the high profile flights, etc., and how that may impact them and what they're seeing in terms of any startup delays or anything happening on the ground.
Amazing. Question from Philip. Kelly, are major airside incidents regularly rehearsed at APOC?
They are. Actually, we have a great team in our resilience planning team led by Craig Thompson, who undertake major exercises every year to make sure that we are fully conversed in a whole load of different contingency responses. Those exercises tend to have really sexy names, but actually there's an awful lot of work that goes into those. Some recent ones include sort of Phoenix and Forks, and we mimic everything from a possible inbound hostage aircraft to an aircraft incident or crash, and then how we would all come together and respond to that and undertake the recovery. And I think it's probably fair to say Heathrow almost has a daily challenge, whether that's delivering runway resurfacing overnight throughout the summer as we currently go through our solutions renewal, to challenging climate change weather events. And it's really important post-event to do wash up and learnings and make changes to modelling tools and plans as well. So we have a whole team that supports us in doing that.
Wow, fantastic stuff. Much better to be prepared. We've got a question from Mache, which Mache has asked us, what is the scope of your cooperation with ATM and ATC, not only in the tower, Ginny, but also other units, so down at NATS HOEC and at Flow Control and also Eurocontrol?
Yeah, so for D-1 planning and on the day zero, so on the day planning, we work very closely in terms of our communication with our colleagues down in Flow and also in terminal control. So although we're primarily focused with Heathrow, they're looking at the bigger picture, so London TMA, which is a complex and busy airspace environment. So it's important for us to understand any of the bottlenecks that they can see, also that's affecting them in terms of sectors, and again that allows us to better understand when any short-term measures are put in place to try and alleviate or negate any delay to our Heathrow traffic. So we are in daily conversations with them. There's something that does take place, so we have a Heathrow Ops community call that takes place, and all stakeholders are invited to take part in that call. So airlines are in that call, and on that call we deliver what the state of play is on the day. And my colleagues down in Flow will also impart their knowledge of the wider network. That again, it's it's really drawing in from as much information as we can to help everyone know what the picture is on the day. We have the Met forecaster there as well. So, and I know our colleagues down in Flow have a Met forecaster with them as well. So that provides us with additional real-time weather data again to make better decisions. But it really is, the HOEC is unique, but it works because we collaborate with our colleagues down in Swanwick, in the Tower, and Eurocontrol, as well as going out and visiting the airlines and having an idea of what's really going on behind the scenes. What people sometimes are not prepared to say in a meeting. We're getting those sort of golden nuggets from conversations that have to be had.
Yeah, absolutely. And sitting next to a Met forecaster must be great for planning your summer barbecues.
Yeah, I don't always trust them though. I've got to be honest. I've not had many barbecues this year.
Who does? So just one thing I wanted to pick up with you very quickly, Ginny, was something you mentioned earlier in the chat, which was you talked about reroutings, and how does that work then? So would you just potentially change the route or suggest to change the route of an aircraft? Why would you do that?
Yeah, so on the day, there's other airspace, so over other countries. So this is where the bigger picture comes into place. They all apply regulations and restrictions over their airspace, which implies it in turn translates into a delay, a slot delay, which is a restriction on an aircraft at which time they can, giving them a specific time that they can take off. Right. So for us, we'd look into that flight plan on behalf of the airlines, and we do this, across all of the airlines that are flying in and out of Heathrow. It's not just the major players or airlines that have a monopoly off the schedule, and we do that to help the traffic flow a lot quicker. So we'll identify which aircraft are due to receive quite a significant delay to their slot. And then we'll look at identifying how we can propose a reroute that may alleviate that delay completely, or negate that delay completely, or reduce it somewhat to help get the traffic moving. So, for example, we'll pick up the phone. We'll just simply pick up the phone to an airline and say, this call sign, this flight has this delay. We recommend that you do this. So we definitely impart that sort of insight to them, and airlines are really receptive to that. They enjoy the fact that someone else is also looking out for them, and although we're looking for the at the overall bigger picture, they benefit from it. So
fantastic. That's really good. We've got a question from Ari, who says, you said the approach in Heathrow is unique, that is the APOC. Would you advise other ANSPs and airports to combine their forces the way that we do it here in London Heathrow? So Kelly, would you advocate that across other international airports?
Absolutely, 100%, because I think the person who benefits from that at the end of the day is the passenger, in that they get more certainty around the likelihood of their flight departing and the schedule being delivered. I think obviously we have some real constraints here at Heathrow, and we have, just as much as we do, an obligation to get passengers away, an obligation to ensure the community gets a good night's sleep, and that the night jet free period is night jet free, and that we manage to give respite to the local community, which is also where the large number of the 90,000 people who make Heathrow work live. So it's important that we do that, and I think through APOC and working together collaboratively as a team, that's what we managed to achieve. So there's all those different considerations coming into those decision models, and I think if we look with the future challenges of airspace as it becomes further constrained and airspace changed, is pushed further to the right in terms of timelines, and we look at everything from whether that might be climate change and more prevalent thunderstorms and weather events, to sort of industrial action, to even sort of global conflict and restrictions on airspace. The likes of APOC is the future to ensure that we can still deliver efficient air travel.
And you said that we've got a 10-year anniversary for APOC, and what a huge change we've had in that period. Where do you see it evolving in the next 10 years?
I guess as we look at it, if we look in the last 10 years, how much more data has become available. And like Ginny says, at the moment, she's proactively managing it when she's sat in that hot seat of picking up the phone to the airline, say you've picked up this amount of delay. I can see moving forward an APOC in 10 years' time being far more data-led, with probably AI systems also supporting some of those decisions and picking up some of those early indicators, so that we can start to support teams to kind of manage their own delivery of their operation and understand how they might benefit from changing or refiling a flight plan, or even if it's just departing through a different sector, if we're really busy in a particular direction, how that might expedite. And I think better use of data and those systems and sharing the knowledge that we have is definitely the future. And I imagine the sort of APOC of the future will look very much like our future digital virtual control facility as well.
Wow, incredible. Daryl has asked, you're both at the helm of what might be called Heathrow's super brain. So on a scale of 1 to we solve world peace before breakfast, how intense does an average day in the APOC really get? So Ginny, you're in there quite a lot. What's it like? How intense does it really get?
I've got to be honest, is although it's intense, I think the people who are in the jobs that we do, is because it comes naturally to us to deal with, you know, the buzz of the operation and that intensity at times. You know, there are days where it's really quiet, and that's great. That's fantastic. But you've got to be ready to get up and go just like that and deal with that intensity. You know, like Kelly had mentioned before, you know, in terms of dealing with what cards are dealt with to you, you've got to sort of at least communicate and talk. And one thing for us, you know, in the HOEC, whatever card is dealt to us, we're definitely neither shaken nor stirred. I think that's the best way to say it, you know, whether despite what's happening on the day. I think there's the right people in the right jobs, and there's also you know, there's a lot to say for the fact that the APOC as a whole, although I am NATS, I don't feel like NATS in there. So even if it was to feel intense, there's that real one team ethos in that floor plate. So you there's always someone, if you don't know something and you need assistance, there's always someone that you can draw from. And likewise, you know, Kelly will share with you that you know, that there's often people coming to us to ask us for sort of that wealth of experience or knowledge, or what did you guys do last time, and how did that, you know, what can we use from that? And that would take us on to another topic in terms of the HOEC. We do a lot of we do, as well as the on the day reactionary, you know, the proactive tasks that take place in the D-1, we deal with a lot of post-ops analysis. So drawing from that to help identify lessons that we need to learn from. And I think we do that really well in terms of the APOC and the HOEC, but I'll let Kelly maybe touch on that too.
I think you're right, Ginny. But I think everybody who's in there is almost like an SME of their little world. There's a real high level of respect amongst the people in there, and no idea is a poor idea or is closed down when we are in that sort of, say, sort of provide world peace by breakfast, as Daryl puts it, in that sort of mode. Then everybody has a voice at that table, and we collectively come up with the plan and the approach to address it. But I think there are days where, very unfortunately, at a busy airport that's home to 84 million passengers and 90,000 workers, there are sad days and tragic incidents, and obviously that comes through APOC as well, because we operate effectively the 999 emergency call centre, which is our 222 function here at Heathrow. But it's really important to ensure that we look after the well-being of the team, and that we deploy trim and post-event support as well, because sometimes whilst we all might look resilient on the outside, it's just as important to look after everybody in there too.
Absolutely, yeah, really important. I think we've probably got time for one more question, and it's a question from Daryl. We're going to go back to him because he says, the airport runs very smoothly thanks to your teams, but if you could create an APOC for your personal life, what daily chaos would it help to manage? So Jeannine, what would the APOC look like in your house?
Oh, well, my son's currently at boarding school, but when he is home, I'm left with, Mum, where's my missing shoe, and where's my, can you stitch name labels into these pieces of uniforms? And I'm not Mary Poppins, so I think I need a couple of Mary Poppins people in the house, a cook, a cleaner, and someone to manage my dog, who practically eats anything that's left on the counter. But I think I'm lucky enough, or blessed enough, to have our own subject matter experts in the house. So grandparents are always there to save the day, whether it be DIY, Wi-Fi, playing up, or just stitching those labels into the uniform for me. So it's and my Tupperware cupboard. If I can get someone round to manage the Tupperware cupboard, and then I know everyone knows what I'm talking about there, that would be great.
That's probably going to require a gold command call, to be fair, Tupperware. And Kelly, what would be your D-1 call to plan for the crises in the household?
I think Tupperware would definitely break most AIs, if I'm honest. So we'll try not to solve that one. I think mine would definitely be a D-1 plan for my kids, because as Ginny says, it's always, normally you get asked for that shoe or to sew the label in the morning. There's the classic, I've got an art project today, and can I just take this and this at 10 to 8? So certainly D-1 planning and collaborative working would be great. But that said, I'm married to a man in IT, so I'm going to say my home network setup is pretty robust. So I've taken some learnings home, but if I could just get my utility room under control, I'm pretty sure that it would make life a lot easier.
Oh, well, that is a lesson for us all. And I'm afraid that is all we've got time for today. I hope that you've all enjoyed the show. And a huge thank you to Kelly and Ginny, and to you for watching and putting forward some really great questions. The show will be available on demand on NATS YouTube channel, as well as an audio podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Keep an eye out on our social channels for details on our next show. And as ever, if you've got any questions or suggestions for future shows, please just let us know. There's been a lot of James Bond references today, so I'll just say, from Heathrow with love, thank you very much.